Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, U.S.Agent, issue number 1. And there's people wondering, like, is it U.S.Agent? U.S.Agent. Anyway, let's get talking about who made this comic book. We'll talk more about the comic book itself. This is going to be one of those episodes that I do where it's first issue spoilers, okay? So I'll let you know I'm going to get into the actual nitty-gritty of the spoilers, because even if you didn't read this comic book, you may be wondering, should I read this comic book? So we're going to get into it and all that good stuff. We're also going to talk about legacy. Anyway, guys, let's get talking about this. So, American Zealot, Chapter 1, Legend. Priest is the writer, the former Christopher Priest. He had his name legally changed, apparently. George's Genty, I'm butchering that name. I apologize. Every time I see the S at the end of George, it's like, George's? My bad. Carl Story does the inks, Matt Mila on colors, VC's Josepino doing the letters, and Marco Checo on cover art. A bunch of variant covers out there, as I guess we should have expected. Stacy Zucker on logo design. Okay. So, and they don't say the creator here. I think it was, I don't remember the artist, but I think it was Grunwald who actually created the writing aspect of the character. I'm actually really disappointed. I think it was John Romita Jr. I think it might have been John Romita Jr. who did the, anyway, verify, because I didn't, and I hate doing reshoots. So anyway, here we are. So we start off with a West Virginia town, and some power plant was blowed up, and like the citizens were actually the citizens of the local, and I should say the locale. If I say local, it sounds like it's a union. I don't think there are any unions in freaking West Virginia. Anyway, in the locale, the citizens apparently blew it up. John Walker is in the middle of all of it. John Walker, that's U.S. Agent's name. You're going to laugh when I tell you that the original idea for his name was Jack Daniels. Yeah. So Jack Daniels, the liquor, became Johnny Walker, the other liquor. Anyway, they had a lot of fun. Grunwald, I'm telling you, man, it's Grunwald, baby. So, what do you call all this crazy stuff? And they're saying that he's an idiot, or excuse me, an idjit and a jackass. I haven't heard idjit in a ridiculously long time, ever since I lived in Ohio. Damn, that was a long time ago. So, apparently this power plant replaced a coal mining operation that went out because they were crooks, like most of the coal mining operations. And then this place came in and it was actually a plant for S.H.I.E.L.D., but S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer exists. So I have no idea what it is that they're trying to explain here. But Valerie Cooper was mentioned, and she's apparently responsible for putting this one dude in charge who isn't able to activate John Walker, yet somehow he activates John Walker to the scene of this craziness. I have no idea what the hell's going on in this. And that, I don't want to say not knowing what's going on is a staple of Priest, but, you know. So, pizza guys keep on showing up, and John Walker is putting them in the freaking basement, and, like, it's some funny stuff. I laughed at some of this stuff, and then this one dude comes up that everybody keeps on calling a Chinaman. Apparently his name is Watanabe, which would make him Japanese. So it's, I don't know, it's weird, man. There were some things that were kind of explained, like his shield kept on getting busted up. And it's like, bro, how is this guy's shield being busted up? It's made out of pure adamantium. You know what I'm saying? And if I remember correctly, yeah, it's secondary adamantium, but still, that was the one that Tony Stark originally made. But then they explained that it was recommissioned, so they're getting these weak versions of the shield instead. That's probably made of some steel iron alloy. Steel is actually an iron alloy, but anyway, some kind of a combination of such. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like Priest is trying to make this into like a, what is it? A Green Hornet story. It's funny because he's playing off of so many tropes of redneck racists and rednecks who don't identify as racists, but they got a lot of racism, you know, hooked into them, honked into them and whatnot. And then stereotypes of people who, like, their parents or their grandparents were clearly immigrants, and maybe you're not an immigrant, but you came from somewhere before here. And I don't know, at least with me, whenever somebody says, you know, where your parents are originally from, I'm more than happy to say, well, actually, I'm third generation American, but, Italian. But I guess because I do technically still come from an immigrant family, maybe I don't have a problem saying where my family came from. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Anyway, there's a lot of stereotypes played off of here. I'm going to get into some spoilers now before I actually start talking about the legacy in here. So we've got several times where Kate, that's what's his name, John Walker's sister, she changed her name at some point. I don't remember what it's called, Talifer or something like that. But she's young Katie Walker. You know what I'm saying? This is his little sister. And they've had some issues before. I think she was introduced before 350 of Captain America, but most of her actual story came out afterwards. This is from the original run, also, Grunwald. So it's heavily explored there. Well, actually, it's not even that heavily. So anyway, it's explored there. It looks like Priest is going to try and explore it a little bit more. Anyway, little things in this comic book. She actually appears at the end of this, besides just in flashbacks. So there's that. Anyway, there's things in here like Yellow Peril. Priest is one of those guys that uses, and I'm gonna say some stuff that's gonna piss off some people. Grow up. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, don't get pissed off. Actually recognize things for what they are. People talk about white privilege all the time. I have no problem talking about white privilege, whatever it is, what it is, the stuff that's real and the stuff that people just make up, But we can also talk about black privilege. And, it's not really that big of a deal. I guess. Christopher Priest, in case anybody's not familiar, is black. He's also calls himself Priest, which is freaking hysterical, considering he's not a priest, he's a minister. Look that one up. I believe it's a Baptist minister. Anyway, it's just, as a kid who grew up Catholic, I just think that's freaking hysterical. Not in any bad way, just ironical laughter. You know what I'm saying? I think it's hysterical. Priest, since he's black, I guess, much like black comedians as opposed to, I don't know, like Bill Burr's the closest that we really get. Saying white people being able to talk about race in comedy. Maybe there's somebody else. Please let me know. I love comedy, and I love when anybody can just talk about anything. So please, if there's another comedian out there like Bill Burr, let me know. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this book that is just... I look at it as if a white person wrote this stuff, he'd be lambasted. He'd be freaking stapled to a wall. You know what I'm saying? I don't find... So that we're clear, I don't find any of this stuff insulting. Nothing here attacks me personally. Nobody actually says my name. You know what I'm saying? Even if they did, I'd be like, how well do you know me, bud? You know what I'm saying? Whatever. I literally look at this as, this is someone who's trying to explore racism in a racist way. And yet let it be okay. Because even though he's writing about a white redneck character and an Asian guy, where it's okay because he's black. You get what I'm saying? Like, this is... Because you're societally allowed to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. Look, I've read some of Priest's work in the past, and we're going to talk about legacy now, because I was not going to talk about the legacy of U.S.Agent, Johnny Walker. I want to talk about the legacy of Christopher Priest. Here's a guy who, he actually did music before. He's, again, an ordained minister. He's been an editor. According to an old CBR article, he doesn't want to be remembered as an editor, just as a writer. Sure. So if I tell you I want to be remembered as an engineer, but not, I want to be remembered as a comic book YouTube personality, not an engineer. Most people are going to remember me for that anyway. I don't think most people know about my background in engineering or in teaching or anything like that, or in business. So I don't know, it's kind of like one of those redundant, weird kind of things where you're trying to set a narrative verbally that I don't think that ever works. I'm pretty sure that never works. I don't know. Christopher Priest is this dude who beat the world up with his version of the Black Panther. If I remember correctly, he's the first black guy to ever actually write the Black Panther. You know what I'm saying? Before that, it was white people and at the time, Jews, because Jewish people weren't considered white at the time when the Black Panther was created, you know? So I find it interesting that he revolutionized the Black Panther. Boom! Oh! And then a bunch of us remember him moving on to do Red Lion, which I finally got another copy of the first appearance recently. Deathstroke, the Terminator, well, Deathstroke #1. But everything else that this guy's done in writing, I don't know if anybody out there has liked it, but I personally just found it boring. I found it very topical. I found it almost purposefully confusing. There are things that can be confusing because they're beyond you. And then there are things that people go out of their way to make confusing. And it almost seems like they're trying to make it seem like it's intellectual because it's confusing. Physics can be confusing, but it's not purposefully confusing. Even when you try and dumb down physics, it's difficult. It's just by nature it is. Nobody's trying, I hope, nobody's trying to make it difficult. We want more scientists, so we're definitely trying to make it simpler, you know? We're making coding games for kids, for crying out loud, to get you into physics and any number of other STEM programs, right? We're trying to make it simpler. Priest just goes out of his way to make stuff difficult for absolutely no reason, except what I can imagine is, see the brilliance of what I'm doing? No, I don't. I see this as a very base comic book with a horribly laid out story. In just the first issue, a horribly laid out story where we're trying to jump around to different things. The whole thing was built on the goddamn pizza man in the beginning. There's a pizza guy who's delivering bombs to people, apparently, and they're specifically gunning or bombing for him. And it's barely even explored. It's like the most basic thing. It's like he comes around the corner, kill, kill, kill. I guess leading to the idea that this redneck John Walker didn't have to go through all of this work to do what he was trying to do. I don't know what the purpose is of why Priest did this, where there's this big build-up for this. This is a big nothing pie. He can't seem to get his hand. His shield has been recommissioned, so he gets garbage shields all the time. We're even throwing it into a freaking car, and apparently it wasn't him who threw it into the car. It was his partner, his version of Kato at this point. Just throwing it into a car by apparently a regular human being can freaking get the thing destroyed. Yet he gets his hands on this flying vehicle that has his motorcycle in the back. So he can afford that, but he can't afford a better shield? I'm completely flabbergasted by how simple this comic book is. I'm not here to bash anybody. I haven't seen a single review, written or teleprompted or freaking, YouTube or whatever. I haven't seen a single review. But I like to imagine what people do based on almost like a presumption as opposed to an assumption. So an assumption based on an awful lot of evidence leading up, like a big yellow brick road full of evidence. The idea that, we'll find the wizard if we walk in a direction is an assumption. A presumption is if we follow the yellow brick road, Oz will be at the end of the Emerald City of Oz will be at the freaking end of, the yellow brick road. That's a presumption, as opposed to if we walk in a direction, we should come upon Oz eventually, or, the Emerald City eventually. So I'm going on the presumption that people like to look at Priest for two reasons. One, because he wrote a really good Black Panther and then just, for the most part, everything just disappeared at that point. Like, to me, he's just the Black Panther guy. Even with Red Lion. Yeah, it's Red Panther. It's pretty much the same guy. He just wanted to go places that Marvel didn't want him to go. So he's that guy. And associating or saying good things about this guy and this guy's work that's what you're supposed to do, right? I don't do what I'm supposed to do. I do what I feel is the right thing. I say and I act upon, I review, and I critique based on what I think is, what's come to me and my understanding of things. Maybe I'm completely off the mark and everybody's going to say, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, you're entitled to that opinion, just like I'm entitled to mine. I haven't seen, for the most part, a single thing outside of Panther Lion stuff that Christopher Priest has done that I've enjoyed. If there is something he's done that you've enjoyed, please throw it my way. There's a good chance that maybe I haven't read it, and I'll read it and I'll go, holy crap, this is really good. But for right now, I see those are the type of people who usually like this. The other type of people are those, the group formerly known as Comicsgate, who barely exists anymore. It's like they're completely owned. They're their own sleeper cell at this point, I feel that there are a lot of people who like that sort of mentality and they propagate that stuff. And Christopher Priest has said some things that they try to propagate themselves. Priest said, I don't like that Marvel's hiring me to do, under Axel Alazo, trying to hire me to do black stories. Once a year, they call me and say, would you like to do this black story? I don't want to just be the black writer. Nobody in the world in their right mind gives a rat's ass what you want to be known as, with all due respect. Because this is the conservative mindset that nobody cares about your feelings. The facts don't care about your feelings. The facts show you're good at writing Black Panther. The facts show you're pretty good at writing Red Lion. The facts show, to me at least, you haven't been really great. Please, name me one other great thing that this guy has written. So I'm not here trying to box the guy in. That's not what I'm trying to do. But this isn't a criticism of Christopher Priest. This is a criticism of that mentality. Yeah, somebody doesn't have to just write. Yeah, of course. I think that should be evident. In and of itself, that should be evident. The very heart of self-evidence. Hi. But for the love of God, just because somebody says something that you agree with, you just say that everything that they've done is wonderful and genius and... No. Only people who predicate their argument upon a flimsy pedestal would ever argue something like that. Only people with the absolute weakest, minimalistic substance would ever argue something like that. A writer makes his or herself. Nowadays, their self. I'm trying to keep up. All right? A writer makes themselves. An artist makes themselves. To this day, I still could give a rat's ass about Picasso. I am not an elitist, and I have no aspirations of ever becoming an elitist. So there is nothing within me that makes me want to say, oh yeah, some people just don't get Picasso, but blah, blah. But that's how Picasso is so famous. Because enough people in power, enough people of influence have said, oh, Picasso, yeah, absolutely. You can see the genius in what he's working. I don't see it as genius. I see it as some jackass. He's probably a nice person in real life. I don't know. I forget my art history. You know what I'm saying? Or more specifically, my artist's history. He's just a freaking guy who drew a nose over here and a head over there. Well, actually, it turns out he was schizophrenic. It sucks to be him. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure the freaking Unabomber had some problems psychologically too. I'm not going to sit here and marvel at his freaking explosive, his ordnance technique. Give me a freaking break. Like, who devises the arguments? I personally see Christopher Priest's legacy as he did a great Black Panther, and he tried to do some other stuff with Red Lion. A character who is more of a cult hero than anything else, or a cult phenomenon than anything else, because he's not mainstream. He's not even remotely close to mainstream. Even DC Comics is more like, eh. You know what I'm saying? They might decide to bring him back one day for something. DC Comics has its own racial problems right now. DC Comics and Warner Brothers Pictures. They've got their... Go check out my most recent podcast that I do with my wife. I'll 2/3 of that is based on all of the problems that DC and Warner Brothers was having right now with the freaking racial issues. And I didn't even get into all of it. Just the stuff in the current news. So yeah, DC could use a freaking Red Lion at this point. They could use anything right now. Bring back Tony Isabella. You really freaking need him at this point. I look at this, I look at Priest's legacy, I look at him trying so hard to change a narrative. I see it all as absolutely failing. Look, maybe this book is going to turn out to be like the best book ever. I see this more as, isn't this only set to be like 5 issues? Whatever the hell it is, I honestly see this, like, here, just for the sake of conversation. The art in here, Giannetti, I really like the art in here. I mean, it fits, specifically for the kind of story that's being told. It really fits well. I would love to see this artist return. Fantastic stuff. And Cicchetto on the cover. We can usually see a Cicchetto at this point, right? Absolutely amazing stuff. The art it really pushes this comic book and makes me want to keep going with the book, you know? But as far as the story itself, it's purposely confusing. I don't see anything innovative in here. I don't see anything brilliant in here. I see a black guy saying, I'm allowed to write about race because nobody's been more oppressed racially than the black man. Meanwhile, the Native Americans are over here going, bud, people forget that we even exist to this day. If somebody says they're Native American, they're like, well, you got like 1 or 2 drops of Native American blood in you. And us natives are more like, you don't determine genetics based on blood tests, dipshit. You know what I'm saying? You don't need a needle. You need a cotton swab to determine my ancestry. But if you had any brains to begin with, you would have at least had a clue onto that. Anyway, and I'm not here to diminish, like, dude, I've marched with Black Lives Matters up here in Mississauga, so, like, I'm not, it's like there's some things you can't touch. If you look white, there's some things you can't touch. It's not something that I really care about too much. But when I see somebody who, like, let's face it, this is a form of privilege to be able to say, I'm black, therefore I can write about racial issues that have nothing to do with me or mine, but I can write about racial things. You literally wrote a book. Mr. Priest wrote a book about 2 racist characters. An Asian guy who I think is Japanese, and a white guy who's known to be a redneck. And that's okay, except you didn't do a good job. I don't know who this book is supposed to represent. I don't understand. And I really liked, I enjoyed the beginning of this. I liked the idea that they went with the modern idea that he's just an F-up. You know, John Walker, he's an F-up. And I like the idea they start off in West Virginia. He's got the accent down really well, you know, as far as writing, transliterating, so-called, the accent. He's got so much of this down. And then he just kind of gets into pizza delivery. Has nothing to do with anything. But that's a good third of the book. And he's poor. But he's got this great equipment that you can't get anywhere else. I'm a little flabbergasted by how absolutely terrible this comic book turned out. I feel like I should get the second issue just to see if it gets better. But let's be realistic. When an issue turns out to be this bad, it's usually not going to be the case. Anyway, this is a really long review. Unfortunately, the comics that I don't like usually are long reviews. I almost feel like the comics that I like are, you know, evident in and of themselves that there's, you know, why they're so good. I try to talk about them as best I can, whatever. In this particular case, I really just did not like, for the most part, anything about this comic book. It is what it is. It's for everybody to judge individually. If you did like the comic book, I would love to hear what parts of the comic book you did like. And saying everything isn't actually an answer, just for the sake of conversation. I would like to know. I would like to be able to reevaluate this, because it's happened before, it could happen again. If you did really like this comic book, and you know, don't give me a TLDR. Like, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? I got a lot of stuff to do, all right? We all have a lot of stuff to do. But if you can, summarize in 2 fairly short paragraphs, like an executive summary, why the things that you did like about the comic book, I'll read it. And it may make me look at it with a new light. It may make me do an issue 2 review. It may make me reevaluate issue number 1 on video. It's happened before. You know what I'm saying? It can happen again. There's plenty of times that I've been brought back to a book. Not plenty, but there's been enough times where I've been brought back to a book because the comments section, somebody, making a really good point. And it really only takes one person. You could be that person. So anyway, guys, that's really it for me for this review. I just found this as being so juvenile. You know what I'm saying? Like this. Anyway, I'm out. I'll talk to you guys later. Like the video, watch an ad. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.